sometimes those moments where you're either by yourself or you're out in public, and there's just this energy shift, and you just like everything just feels like it's a simulation. It's like you like in that moment, like you genuinely feel like is this like actually real?
It's crazy.
You can feel the emotions of like, all right, I fucked up for that, like I messed up, but you can't let that be the rest of your life. You have to come to terms with that and be like, okay, I did that, but I'm not obligated to be that person anymore. I can learn from that experience and then change it and not do it again.
Exactly. Learn, grow, evolve. Don't get stuck.
Kaleigh, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you're on. So, one thing you talked about on your page on TikTok was there was a video talking about not being told how life actually works. You know, like where we grow up and we go to school and everything, we spend so much time there, but what do we really learn about reality in the real world?
Yeah, I think I think in school we we learn so much of the basics, and I feel like since kind of waking up to everything, I I just feel like I'm a whole different person, obviously, because you grow and you evolve and you become a different person. But when you wake up, you seriously feel like you're in a new whole body because as a kid, you had this idea of what the world looked like. As a kid, I grew up Christian and kind of in that religion. I was a young life leader. I was all into that space. And for a while that made sense to me and that worked for me. But once I started I actually then transitioned into a Christian university my freshman year, and I started learning, and I just started having discernment within myself, and I was like, so this is not clicking for me. And it did for some of my friends, but it wasn't for me. I had so many questions. I never got the questions answered. I researched on my own outside of my classes, outside of my theology classes, and I still couldn't figure out the answer. So I'm like, okay, if this is not making sense, I'm a very logical person as well. I'm like, if this is not making sense, then something has to. And so that's kind of where my whole journey began into like waking up and figuring out like this is how the world is and this is how it can be. I've just been so blind to it. And so once you start waking up, you're kind of like, holy shit, like it is really, it can, the world can work out for you. It isn't, I think in religion, it was this idea of, this is your path and this is how you're supposed to live. And it felt very limiting. And then once I got out of that, I think the world just opened up for me. I felt like there were so many more possibilities. And in school, you're just not taught that. You're not taught how the world actually works, quantum physics, energy, the universe. It's just very basic. And I just wish we were taught more about our emotions too, and like just basics. Like I feel like this should just be start to being taught in kindergarten, but we're not. It's this evolution that people have to go through, and that's why when people wake up, it's like this revolutionary thing in their life because it's like what the like I haven't been living life like how it really is. I don't know. I just feel like
Yeah,
yeah,
I think there's so much hidden knowledge that should be general knowledge, should be things that, when you're young in school, it's just, all right, this is, a law of the universe, and, this is how you deal with your emotions. This is what you should do when you're angry instead of doing this. And, it's like not everything is completely black and white, but just giving that general overview would be an amazing start to just helping people
absolutely.
embark on like the journey that their life should be projected into.
Absolutely. I so agree with that. I think especially for men too. I think emotions and how you handle life, and that's why we're seeing kind of this weird, I don't know. I feel like it's so strange to see people interact nowadays. It's like interaction is like rare, you know, conversation, if you spark conversation out in public, it's weird, like, you know. So I don't know, I just think, and then you bring social media into it, and then it makes everybody even more antisocial. um and I think that's kind of where our generation is in this weird spot of like, I feel awkward doing this, and this is an ick, and then this is this, and then this is this, and then you get all in your head, and then it's like this very limiting world that we live in. um but yeah, I don't know, I think it's strange, truly.
It's very interesting how in public it seems like we'll go on social media and post like our entire life on there, but then in public it's like we're a different person. Like you might be seen like the most confident, outgoing person on social media, but you see that person in person, and they're just like,
Yeah, exactly. It's so strange. I think we live in a virtual reality now, and people see people online and have this expectation. And that goes for everything, seeing how people live and how they look and blah blah blah, and you see them in real life, and it's like, whoa, this isn't reality. This isn't what it seems like it is online.
yeah, people have. Yeah, that's one thing social media has done is given false confidence to so many people.
For
I think it was like 2 summers ago or something. I was hanging out with my buddies, and we were with a few girls. We were hanging out at one of their houses, and one of the girls was telling us about a guy that she was hanging out with, and when they first met or whatever, when he got her Snapchat or whatever, and they were talking, he seemed so confident. He was talking all this stuff, being so flirty, and then when they hung out in person, he
sure.
was like the most shy kid ever. Didn't had nothing to do with anything he was talking about, and it's given people such a false perception of like how they are in real life.
Yeah, and I think that you've got a really good point there, because I think that's where anxiety and depression comes in a lot in our generation, because it's these expectations, these dopamine hits that we get online, and we see this and we have this expectation, and we especially for women too, like in that situation, it's like you kind of have this imagination in your head of how things are supposed to turn out and how it's going to go, and you can see their whole life online, so you can literally have such a clear idea in your head of who you think they are. And so you have this like perceived idea before you go into a date or whatever it is, friendship, whatever it is, and then you're let down. And then it's like, well, this isn't reality. But it seemed like it was in my head. I had this beautiful idea of how it was supposed to be, and then in real life it just kind of went to crap, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, one thing that social media often does is it it puts everyone, like somebody might be on this level, but it puts them up to here, because the only thing that 99% of people post on social media is their good moments, their happiest moments. But that, they might have 10 Instagram posts, and all of them seem like they're doing so well in life and they have a lot of money and this and that. But it's like, how many people have a lot of money but are depressed and anxious all the time?
Exactly.
And every single time you see those posts of like, oh, they seem so happy, like that's one moment and throughout their entire life that they decided to post.
Exactly.
That the entirety of the rest of their life, it
Mhm.
might be pretty good. It might be. But
Yeah.
it also might be completely shit.
Absolutely. And you see it, and you see it on TikTok, is that you see it in the comments. It's everywhere. It's these assumptions that they know your entire life. Even on that, I just posted a recent video that um got fairly a big amount of attention, and there's a people in the comments just assuming what my life is. And I'm like, this is a 2.5 minute video, and you're assuming everything that my life is. And I will be like, I'm completely transparent. I have my moments. Like I still struggle every single day with having that passion, having that determination. Everything that I talk about in my videos and that I post on TikTok is stuff that I'm struggling with. And the reason why I post it is because I'm struggling with it and I want to help other people. And I get super excited when I figure out things that help me, and I get super passionate about it. I want to talk to my friends, but unfortunately I don't have a group of people that kind of think alike yet around me, and so it's really just me, myself, and I. And so that's why I started posting my TikToks. And yeah, that assumption of, you know, they know your entire life from 3 minutes is such a crazy concept and such a crazy idea.
Yeah, I mean, when I do my podcast and I talk to people, I try. It's very important to like be relatable to people because it's like I don't want to create this false perception of I have everything figured out, and like sure I'm giving advice and talking about certain stuff on here, but it's like this is stuff I've went through and I'm still
Absolutely.
going through. And
Absolutely.
I think there's been times in my past where there's been like one or two people in real life that had this perception of me that I'm like this because I mean I've struggled with kind of expressing my emotions in certain manners throughout my life. And these certain people had a perception of me that like since I was like the only person in the friend group, doing all this self-improvement stuff, the spirituality type stuff, they thoroughly believed that I had it all figured out. And it's like I don't. I
Yeah.
do not know everything, and I never will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with that. It's and a lot of people, even in my comments too, were like, "I want to be your friend," and blah blah blah. And like that's super cool. That's a great feeling for me because I feel like I have such a small group, and like I love being social and the whole nine yards. But I'm not like that all the time, and I think people assume that in my comments is like, you know, I talked about perception and not taking life too seriously, and people were like, "Well, it's just not that simple." And I'm like, I'm not saying it's not that simple because it's absolutely so not simple. I've been through a lot, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking about this is because I've been through all that shit, and I had to figure out how to get myself out of it. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think most of us, we're all in our like early 20s, and it's just trying to figure out how to manage life the best we can in this new world that's like very unprecedented, from COVID and kind of transitioning out of that and this new digital reality that we're living in. It's all new. It's all brand new. And so I think we're all just trying to like figure out and manage it. And that's just what I talk about because it's hard. It's really, really hard and nobody's been through it and everybody's making a bunch of mistakes right now, which is gonna happen. But I don't know. It's really just trial and error with life right now. And that's what I'm talking about on online because I have nobody else to talk about it to. So
Yeah, I hear you. And then that's one of the beautiful things about social media for you to be able to go on there and share your story and try to help other people and get feedback and have the other people actually connect with what you're saying when you because there are a lot of us who don't have might not have that specific person or those specific people in our life at the time. So social media is a great way to be able to connect with people you would have
yeah,
never been able to. We would have never been able to do this podcast if social media never existed. I wouldn't even know you exist.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like we take advantage of the fact that we have literally all the information that we need at the palm of our hands. And instead of using it to our disadvantage, why don't we start using it to our advantage? I listen to podcasts and read books and audiobooks and um, research. Like my whole awakening wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for online. That's how I started it. Um, coming home and literally going on like DuckDuckGo and just looking at all this like researching theology and what made sense and what didn't make sense to me. And I don't know, I think a lot of us look at social media as the bad guy, which it can be if you but that's all. You have the power in your hands to either make it a good or bad thing. You just have to kind of play your cards right with it.
Right, 100%. And this is something I wanted to talk about with you is a video you made about, life taking life too seriously. And I know that in a sense it like contradicts what we're talking about because we don't have it all figured out and, you know, even though life doesn't have to be that serious, like it's still difficult to like adopt that mindset. But
Absolutely.
I still believe, when I think about the spiritual aspect of it, and life taking its course.
Mm.
At the end of the day, no matter what happens, all of us are going to die one day. All of this is going to cease to exist for us, and ultimately, all of your stresses and all the things you're so worried about, it's none of it's going to matter.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I was kind of talking about in the video, and people took it so seriously, and I totally see where they're coming from, and I can see where people kind of got the wrong idea from it as well. My take from it was that I got home actually that day from a weird day at work where I was just kind of, energy was off. I felt a little off, and I was kind of thinking about some conversations I had that day, and I was thinking about what they were saying and what I was saying, and I was like, bro, like, it's so not that serious. And I'm tend to be an overthinker. That's why I made the video, is that I overthink literally everything, and that has been part of my healing, is learning to overcome that overthinking tendency, because it took a toll of me, out of me physically. I got sick from it, literally, just from stressing myself out all the time, and I still struggle with that. I'm so much better at it now because I feel like I live a pretty carefree life now, because if you just think of it literally in the grand scheme of things, you are the universe, and all the little things that happen in your day-to-day life most likely don't matter. Like, don't matter if you just look at life for how it actually is, that you're just a spirit living a human experience, and you're here to feel all the human emotions and experience everything and learn and grow. Then you can kind of release all the stress of like nitpicking every little thing about your life, when you can kind of just release into it and just be like, you know what, this is why I'm here, is to experience all the good and all the bad that come with it.
I think that's something. The good and the bad things is something we don't really take into account. We want to feel good
Right.
24/7, 100% of the time. But that's just not how life and how our brain and how our consciousness and how our emotions and our body, it's just not how it works. There's going to be days where you're going to be angry, or you're going to be sad, or something bad is going to happen to you, and it's going to ruin your day, or whatever it is. Um, but it's those times of when you're going through the dark times and things are difficult. It's like that. Though all those things are teaching you stuff, and it's just a part of existence. And it's like, even though a lot of the time we can we feel alone in those moments, you have to realize that, like, no matter what you think anybody else, when you look at all those other people and you think they have it all figured out and you think they are happy all the time, because whenever you hang out with them they seem to be happy, I guarantee you they are not like that. There's I think there's 0.1% of people that are actually genuinely happy 99% of the time.
And have it figured out. Like, there's such a tiny amount of people that know what they're doing in life. Like, I used to have this idea as a kid too. I would like look at my parents and I was like, when did you know that like you wanted children? They're like, or like, when did you know you were ready that you wanted children? And they're like, we didn't. We were never ready to have children, but we're just like, all right, F it, here we go. So it's kind of, everybody just does, like, nobody has it figured out. And kind of going back to what you're talking about with emotions, is like, yes, that's what I kind of talk about on my TikTok, is yes, feel those emotions, and that's what helps you grow. But what becomes detrimental is when you sulk in those negative emotions for a prolonged amount of time. If you allow yourself to feel it, allow it to be in your body, allow yourself to work through it, but then let it pass and don't let it be stagnant in your body. That's why people talk about how forgiveness and anger, and all of that is so important to release and move on, because that's stuff that gets stuck in your body and can cause actual physical reactions and health issues and the whole nine yards. So I think just figuring out how to deal with those emotions and letting them pass through is the most important part. but also embracing the bad that happens and just working through them. Because it's honestly, sometimes when bad stuff happens in my life, I kind of sit there and I'm like, this is actually like, it's making my life interesting. You know, like I don't know. You just have to have a different perspective with it, you know?
Yeah, and forgiveness is forgiveness of myself and especially for other people is something that I've tried to work really hard on, because it's when you hold on to the anger and all the stuff, all the people that did you wrong, and every time you think about that, you're like, oh, I hate that person, whatever. The only person you're hurting is yourself.
Exactly.
That other person, they don't give a fuck about what your perception of them is, because you guys aren't even in each other's lives anymore. So neither of you don't they don't even know you're thinking about them. So the only person you're hurting when you're thinking about all those negative things is literally yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's more detrimental for yourself to everybody's thinking about themselves. Nobody's like, I'm sorry, like every once in a while, like maybe like if you're having a fling with somebody, whatever, they'll be thinking about you occasionally, but nobody's thinking about you like that. Like you have to let it go for yourself. And that's the key word that you said there, was that forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for the stuff that you do on a daily basis as well. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because it's not only with forgiving other people, but if you don't forgive yourself, you're just going to be living in pain all the time. Because I think it's important to, if you really did make a mistake or a few mistakes that really like it hurt another person, whatever it was, like you can feel the emotions of like, all right, I fucked up for that, like I messed up, but you can't let that be the rest of your life. You have to come to terms with that and be like, okay, I did that, but I'm not obligated to be that person anymore. I can learn from that experience and then change it and not do it again.
Exactly. Learn, grow, evolve. Don't get stuck in that space and in that energy that you feel like was bringing you down or was bad. Is like a lot of people do that, is that something bad happens and it's like, oh well, I'm not worthy, and I'm not enough, and I'm not capable. But if you allow it to be stuck within you and to fester and to go, and if you bring it on to the next 3 weeks ahead of you, then yeah, it will be a limiting thing, it will be a limiting emotion, it will be something that limited you. But you have the control and you have the power to change that and to evolve and grow and learn. And yeah, whenever something goes on in my life too, I promise you there's somebody out there that can talk about it in a podcast and help you out. I swear to you. I do it all the time. If I need help with something and I don't know how to deal with it myself, you have all the knowledge, all the things at the palm of your hand. You just have to do it. You just have to put it to action.
100%. You mentioned quantum physics before.
Yeah.
I've heard about quantum physics being related to spirituality and concepts like that, but I've never really done any research on it. Have you?
Too much. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the very beginning and what solidified things for me. My mom actually started on this whole journey before I did. I was a young life leader. I was into the whole religion thing. I'm from the South, so I was kind of raised on that. Um, and my mom started it, and I almost resented the fact that she did, because I was like, you're going against the Bible, and that's not what this says, and blah blah blah. And it never made sense to me the way she explained it. Nothing against her. It's just it didn't click in my head. And I think, parents and mom have a different relationship, right? But then I started reading this book by Joe Dispenza, and he broke it down on a scientific level, on like what it is, what energy is, how the universe works, how your atoms, how your cell, how your body works with the universe. And that's when it all of a sudden clicked for me. That's when I was like, oh, these mindset people that are talking about mindset and your thoughts and how they affect your reality, that's true. Like it's just fact, like it's based on facts. And that's where I was saying is like, that's crazy that we're not taught that in school, because the way it just like clicked in my brain, I will always, always recommend Joe Dispenza to anybody I talk to. Any of his books. Breaking the Habits of Being Yourself, I think, was the first book that I read, but he breaks it down like literally step by step about how what happens in your brain when you think a certain thought and when you feel a certain emotion, and how that interacts with the universe and how your energy interacts with the universe. And that's where everything kind of spiraled for me ever since then.
That's just like you said before. That's another example of like just knowledge about like the real world just being
Absolutely.
completely hidden from you, because it's like you go throughout your entire life and then you either there's two types of people. There's the people that go throughout life and like us and we realize the different energies and all this stuff that's going on,
Mm.
and then there's the people that don't,
Yep.
and for the people that don't, it is very difficult to convince somebody of this type of stuff.
It's so difficult. And I was one of those people. And I was one of those people because I just couldn't conceptualize it in my head. I was like, what are you talking about? Like energy and crystals and all that. I've had a label on that type of person for a very long time. And it's like, you don't have to be that hippie type of person to just believe in like how the universe and how yourself actually just functions on a day-to-day basis. Like I don't know why they have such a label on them for, living the way they do and thinking the way they do. It's like I think I start to bring up certain topics in conversation with my friends, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And they know me for being like this crazy like mindset person. All my friends don't even know about this TikTok that I have that I like talk about, because I don't want anybody else's opinion. I want to be able to speak my mind freely about it. They know that who I am and how I act and the way I give advice and everything, and they know how into all of this I am. But with all of this, I just like I'm on my own grind. I'm doing my own thing, and I want to be able to authentically speak to my audience and authentically speak to people about what life can truly be.
I think these concepts are it's very disruptive to most people, because it's it's pretty contradictory to what society and the government and the education system is trying to teach you about what life is and how the world works, because it's the people who seem to have everything figured out and the authority that knows everything, the government, the school system, etc., versus you know some doctors, so a certain group of people that they're a little bit out there. Like I don't know if that's so
Mhm.
true. So in the grand scheme of things, when people who don't who have never been exposed to any of this knowledge, it's choosing between trusting like the government and the school system compared to trusting those people. They usually trust what they know because it's what's comfortable, and that's where the government and the education system has succeeded in hiding all this stuff from
Yeah,
people.
I think that's kind of where the bystander effect kind of comes into play as well, where society as a whole thinks one way, and then everybody's like, oh, that's the way I'm supposed to think. I saw this TikTok recently, and this girl was talking about how this teacher took a fish out of the water and put it on the counter in a classroom of people, and he left. And he was going to see who, he said, don't touch the fish. Nobody can move. Nobody can get up, whatever. And he comes back, and this one girl gets up and puts it back in, but it all took them so long before she put it back in, because everybody's like, oh, we were told not to by our teacher. But she was like crying talking about it, because she was like, I let a teacher take the humanity literally out of me. And I think, like you said, with the lab coats, and especially with doctors and people with high celebrities, media influencers, I think we put this like pedestal on them, and we think, oh, this is the way that we're supposed to think. And anybody who's kind of drifting off, we label them as crazy or hippie, whatever it is. I think it's just kind of how society is, and I think it takes a lot to take a strong person to be able to stand up and who you really are and how you actually think, and to kind of merge away from how everybody else believes and what everybody else thinks.
And that takes time, like building that confidence and, you know, delving into the knowledge and kind of expanding your view on things and learning how different aspects of reality work. Like it takes time. It's like because I seem like to most people like I'm pretty confident in like this type of stuff that I'm talking about it and what I know and believe. But there was a time where it's like I wasn't that confident. I used to sit in the classroom and not ever talk to anybody because it's like what do I need to talk to anyone for? It's like I'm not really supposed to do that, right? But then there came to this point where it's like I started to learn all this stuff about how reality works, and it's like all of this stuff like that they teach. It's like none of this matters. Like we are taught from a young age to care about what other people think to such a high degree that's unhealthy for us. And like the example you just gave about the choosing between saving a fish's life and doing what you're told, even though it's not the right thing to do. There was an instant. There was an instance in my senior year of high school. I remember one time specifically. I was in my English class, and we were supposed to write an essay or whatever. But we just got into class, and we weren't going to start until like 10 minutes from then. And I go out to my teacher, and you have to. You have to ask someone to go to the bathroom. What the fuck is that? Anyway, so I go up to her and I go, "Can I go to the bathroom?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Why not? We're starting in like 10 minutes." And she's like, "You just can't go." And so I said to her, "I'm going." And she goes, "If you walk out that door, I'm writing you up." I said, "Okay," and I left. And then but it's like this little stuff, like it's. I think I don't want to bash on teachers because I know there are a lot of good-hearted and good teachers out there, but there are also a lot that I've had to deal with they're very authoritarian in the sense of like they want to tell you to do something or not to do something just because they think they can, even though it doesn't really make sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like this. I think people get put like a title on them. I grew up a dancer. And so I went through elementary and middle school, but I never went through high school because I did it online and I was dancing, I was traveling the whole 9 yards. But I saw it so much with coaches, and I worked with a lot of people in the industry, and it was that also kind of, I think, was fundamental for me in changing everything, because I was like seeing the way that they were acting and the way that they had this air and ego attached to them. And I was like, we're on the same level here. I don't understand why I'm getting so worked up about it too. It really affected me and it affected my teammates. And I don't know. I think, like you said, it's so crazy, especially with professors in college too. It drives me up the wall. It really does. It is so crazy to think how that works in real life, that you get this title but that's in like everything that we do. Like our society is built upon like tiers, which is so crazy to think about. And I kind of learned through my spiritual journey that that's not how we're supposed to live. We're all equal. We're all one. We're all connected. And as much as I believe in roles and in leadership positions, there's a difference between tiers and classes um and roles and positions that people take, that strengths and weaknesses, that this person should take on this role and this person should take on this role. But I don't know, it blows my mind, and that's the one thing that that does it's hard for me to swallow. Yeah.
And you have to realize like all the people who are at the top, the political people, the celebrities, this and that, 99% of them, they don't care about you. They don't even know who you are, and
Yeah,
even if they did, they still wouldn't care about you.
yeah,
There's such there's such messed up stuff that's going on out there that most people aren't even aware of.
yeah,
And it's you're idolizing these people that they just I can't put it any other way. They just simply don't care. You idolize this certain celebrity, this singer, this actor, this actress of like what they do and everything. Like you can like people and like what they do. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but people prioritize these celebrities to a point where it's like they have to follow every single thing they're doing in their lives, and this relationship with this, and it's like it how is this at all relating to your life? It's the way I like to describe it, it's just all another distraction.
yeah. I think it's you brought up a great point too. These celebrities, these influencers, these political figures, whatever, they don't have a grip on reality. They don't have a grip on reality themselves. And then now all of a sudden you have a huge group of people who are following and influenced by those people who don't have a solid grip on reality either. And so now we have this mass group of people who are just living in their own world. And I think that's what is so scary about all of this as well, is that how influential our society is. I mean, you think about even just the basic level of like the Kardashians. It's like they do one thing and every single person has to be wearing the same thing or look the way that they do, and whatever it is. It's just it's a wild concept, and I think right now for our generation specifically, it is more than important to hold your ground and stick your ground into who you are and what you believe. And knowledge is power. So enriching your life with the amount of knowledge, because knowledge also creates confidence too. Like if you build up your knowledge, that's where I became confident too. That's how I became confident. You're not going to become confident from buying Kim Kardashian's lipstick or whatever it is. You have to start building that up now, because you have all these figures out here that are being told certain things by a group of team members, and they're being lifted up for a specific reason, and you have to kind of hold your ground and be like, no, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and this is why I'm living my life this way and not that way.
It's so crazy to me how good of a job they've been able to set just the way society works, so that everybody is so eager everyone's so eager to
Yeah,
follow these people and follow whatever they're being told, because I mean that's just it's kind of like it's very it makes things very difficult for most people, because it's you always have to question when you're growing up, and once you get to like the around the age of 18, it's like, have I been living my life for myself, or are all the things I believe about reality and me coming from other people? And so
right.
you have to make that distinction to then realize, I believe this about the world, but I was told this by
Mm-hmm.
this person. Is that really how it works, or do I just believe it because they told me that? And you have to and then you come to this age where you graduate high school, and I know where I live, it's either you go to college or you're a piece of shit and you're not going to get anywhere in life. And I just don't believe that it's true, because in so many ways it's like we describe success, and that's another thing. Our, every single person, like, no matter how much money we have now, success nowadays has become, you have to be a millionaire. You have to have a really nice house. You have to have as
Materialism.
many materialism, as many sexual partners as possible. And it's just it's this stuff that not only is not really healthy for you, but 99.9% of people are never even going to achieve that, even if they tried hard enough.
Exactly. Yeah, I so agree with that. I think also now more than ever, independence in yourself is so important. I think we've lost that. I will never forget this, but my freshman year of college, we were all in our dorms, and I remember all my friends being like, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go get dinner at the dinner hall, and I'll be right back. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, no, 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 like you're going alone? I was like, yeah, I'm going alone. And all of them were like, no, 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 like, well, they're like, I could never do that. I would never do that. I can't even walk to, the other building without bringing somebody with me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's crazy to me too. I'm also an only child. I grew up an only child, so I kind of had to grow up on just independence and I think discernment in social media, and the stuff you learn and the stuff you see on a day-to-day basis is so important right now. And having um just this self-awareness nowadays is going to be more important than it has been for years, because like you said, we have so many of those influential people that are turning people left and right, and you have to just be on your own path and be confident enough in yourself to be like, no, 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 this is how I'm going to live, and this is how my life is going to be for me, and not because somebody else told me so.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm only 19, but I like to think to myself, you know, if I decided to live my life based off of what everyone else wanted from me, like where would I be when I'm 40 and beyond? Like would I be happy? Would I be content with what I'm doing? Or and then it's like, what if I instead, since I have the opportunity to try and pursue something that I'm passionate about, what if I decided to do that instead? Because you have to think about it. It's like this is this is it. Like this, you how old you are now to whenever you decide to die, it could be tomorrow. Like that's it. You can choose to do everything based on what other people want for you, and then be unhappy, and
Yeah,
then choose to do something that you're passionate about and be happy. And it's like, why not choose to be happy and try to do some, at least try to get to that place.
absolutely. I think I've said that since I was even a little girl. I always like walked around. I was always a very positive, optimistic person, and I just encounter rude people, especially in the industry, in the dance industry, and I was always like, what? Like that blew my mind. I was like, how? I mean, I understand like where you come from, and that affects your mood and whatever, but I never understood people that who were just consistently just in a bad mood. I was like, it is your choice. It truly is your choice. I don't care where you grew up, where you came from, how you were raised. You ultimately do have the choice. You wake up every day and be like, okay, I have the power within me to be a good person or to be a bad person, and we're all collectively one. And that's what I was talking about, even when we talk about the tiers and the whole nine yards of like celebrities and the whole nine. I don't know. It's just it's just we all have to remember that collectively, spiritually, we're all one, and to be rude and to go out of your way just to be and choose negativity and choose anger, choose frustration, whatever, that's ultimately your decision. That's ultimately your decision.
Yeah, because we have all these subconscious programs in our mind. I know that's something you talked about. That's something I like to talk about a lot. And like, because of your childhood and all these different areas, you might be more likely to act or feel a certain way in certain situations. But at the end of the day, the awareness is going to be able to override that and then change the subconscious programs. Because I genuinely believe those people that are rude the majority of the time, it's like there is no other place that it can come from but insecurity. And it's not always like it's not always their fault, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like it could be from a childhood experience or some experience they had with someone when they were a teenager, whatever it is. But it's your responsibility
It
to
is.
take control about how you feel and what you decide to express into the world. Because it's like you compare that negativity to then like a positive person or someone who's just trying to do good in the world. It's like you usually when people are trying to do good stuff, it's not out of I think for some people it could be a little bit of an insecurity of like, all right, I feel like I need to do this. But I think for most people, it's like you're doing good things because like you are trying to help other people, and it's not coming from this egotistical way.
Right.
Whereas in the negative space, when someone just says something rude to you, it's coming from an egotistical way of them trying to defend themselves because in sometime in the past they weren't able to defend themselves.
Right. Absolutely. I think a lot of that too, how you're kind of talking about this, but a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding about how to kind of build yourself up in order to be confident enough. Everything that happens in your life and the interactions that you have every day is a reflection of yourself. And that also goes back into quantum physics. That literally everything that happens in your reality is just you. Everything that you're experiencing in your reality is is how you're perceiving reality. It's not actually reality. And I think a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding about how that's why I talk about how important it is to bring this into schools is because if we all collectively had an understanding how reality works and how our insecurities are projected into our everyday interactions, we could save ourselves a lot of heartbreak, a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. Um, and I think, like you said, is just a, I feel so lucky to have been brought into this space and have had an understanding of how this works. Because every day, and I have interactions with other people that are rude or blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, you have to understand, Kaleigh, that they're coming from a different perspective. They grew up differently than you do. They maybe not know all the stuff that you know. You know, you're living in your own reality. They're living in their own reality. So they're just projecting their reality onto you. Don't let it perceive your own reality, if that makes sense.
100%. I mean, it's just I'm trying to think of a specific example, but it's just let's say it's let's say it's 60 degrees outside, and someone can go outside and it's nice weather, whatever, and they're like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." But then someone who lives somewhere where it's 90 degrees all the time, they'd be like, "Oh, it's so cold." It's like that. It's like that's just how you're because of your experiences. That's how you're just perceiving reality. Someone views it as something very beautiful, and someone views it as something negative, and it's like, "Oh, it's cold." So it's just it really is important to acknowledge that we are all literally living in different realities.
Exactly. And I think having an awareness is the first. I think this is like truly the first step of like spirituality and kind of awakening of having the understanding that everybody is so different from you and you can't get upset by the way that they act and how they interact with you. I mean, you can obviously, but you can't take it to heart and you can't take it so seriously because they're living a complete, like, you have no idea how their life is going. Even like the person that you spend the most time with, like mine is my mom. I spend so much time with my mom. I still don't know the half about her. Like, I still don't know so much of her life because I don't know her head. I don't know her heart. I don't know I don't know that. I don't know what goes on in her head. And we don't know that about everybody. And having this just compassion and understanding that we're all collectively one, we're all living our different experiences, we're all on our own paths and our own journeys. And maybe their awakening hasn't come yet. Maybe they don't know yet, whatever it is. And even if you feel like that you have a good perception of them, you don't. You really don't. Because you will never even know, even the person that you marry. You'll know them to a certain degree, but you don't know their head, and you have to kind of step back and have that realization.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept, and it's crazy to think about how, like, no matter how much you think you know someone,
Mm-hmm.
you're never gonna know what the thoughts are and the self-talk that they narrate or think about you or whatever it is, you're never gonna genuinely know what that is 100% because out of 100 of those thoughts, they'll say one of them, but like
Absolutely.
you never know the other ones that are there.
Exactly. And it's what even more blows my mind is you think about how like each person is just so different in their own realities. You look at everybody around you and you think that they see you as you see yourself, but it's so not that. They perceive you by the couple interactions that you've had, but you have this idea of how they perceive you, but that's not the actual perception. It's wild. Like it gets really hard for my brain to conceptualize. And I heard this thing on a podcast one time that kind of changed my life because for the longest time I was trying to get answers. I'm a very much like I want to figure it out. I'm a very curious person. And she was just saying like with spirituality, you have to come to realize that you're not going to ever have an answer to what life is, what it's about. You can figure it out and we can dive as deep as you can to try to understand, but you will never, our human brains are just not able to conceptualize life itself. So stop trying and stressing yourself out to try to figure it out because you won't be able to. Just knowledge is power, and being curious is a great attribute to have, but not stressing yourself in that. I feel like that's more of a me tidbit of giving myself advice because I always dig a little bit too deep sometimes about the universe and everything, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very deep rabbit hole.
It
Sometimes you can
is.
go a little bit too deep and then you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, okay.
Yeah. You see, like, have you ever been like laying in bed and you think a little bit too deeply about life and how everybody, like, I don't know how everything works, and then you just get this like weird feeling in your stomach? Have you ever had that? Like, I do
Yeah.
that all the time where I just think too much about like the universe and stuff, and it just like it gets this like weird feeling in my stomach because it's like you can't even conceptualize it. It's so wild to even think about.
Yeah, and there's also, I mean, I'm sure maybe you can relate to this. There's just sometimes those moments where you're either by yourself or you're out in public, and there's just this energy shift, and you just like everything just feels like it's a simulation. It's like you like in that moment, like you genuinely feel like is this like actually real?
It's crazy. It's the weirdest feeling. I had a time in my life when I was living in Oregon that happened to me way too much. I think it's a little bit of depersonalization too, where you kind of like step out of your body and you're like, what is happening? What is going on? Like when you're driving too, and you kind of just like space out and you're like, what? Like, I did not just drive those last 10 miles. That's crazy. Um, yeah, but those times where you just like look around and especially like in malls and like really crowded places, and you're just looking around and you're like, oh my God, this is so weird. I don't know. It is such a weird thing to think about if you like zoom out for a second and see yourself like on a planet, like walking around like a little video game. It's so weird to think about. It's so weird.
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think anything happens after you die?
I do. I do. I have a lot of stuff going on in my head about that. It's been a journey and I'm still in the process of trying to understand it more, but if you listen to Dolores Cannon, she talks a lot about the afterlife and before you come here and the contracts that you make before you come here, um, to kind of fulfill your purpose, because a lot of religious stuff that I learned in the Bible and stuff never made sense in my head. I was like, so why do bad things happen to good people and why does this happen? And now I'm starting to understand how it all works. But I think we're all souls, and I don't know if it's like reincarnation that I'm thinking, or I think we all of our souls have a purpose and we live out until we serve that purpose. And I'm not sure what happens after that purpose is served. I don't know. And I may never know, but that's just kind of the journey that I'm on right now of like, okay, so how does this actually work? How does life actually work? That's been a hard transition out of religion for sure to figure out how that
Right.
works.
I've talked to a monk before, and he kind of explained reincarnation in some terms as, you know, like, let's say you live most of your life lazy, and you like in the next life you might be something like a cat or a
Right.
dog, um, or
Mhm.
I think it's something like a cat, and then like if you're more like aggressive or something in terms of that, then you might be a dog. And you know, it's like it's interesting to think about that type of stuff because it's like, you know, you've always you hear people about who claim that they remember the past lives, and with that, you know, it's like I don't ever like discredit it,
Yeah.
but you know, like I always go into conversations and like listening to those people with an open mind. It's just, but in the back of your mind, it's always like, since I don't have that experience, like I don't remember my past life if I had one. So like, does this person like, are they like, do they actually, did they actually live that life, or do they just like for some reason fully believe it, or are they just putting up a
Right.
front? And it's just it's
It's hard to conceptualize. Yeah, I think like you said, I listen to a lot of Jay Shetty too, and he's a monk. Um, and he kind of talked about too like these like contracts and these purposes, like you said, if you're a more aggressive person, you kind of like they're kind of turns into a dog or whatever. But I think we each our souls have this purpose here on this planet, and it might not like it sometimes it's just not a big purpose. It's like literally just to learn one lesson and then you're out. And that kind of answered the question for me of like, why do bad things happen to good people? Of like, okay, well, their purpose was served in some shape or form. We may not be able to understand that, but it was served in some way, and now they're now evolving in the next life that they're about to live a different purpose or a similar purpose, that will kind of push them to the next lesson. I don't know if that's how it works, but that's kind of what I've gathered from what I've been reading, learning, understanding, listening to. Um, but it's a crazy like concept to conceptualize, and hearing some of the stories I went a rabbit hole one night listening to like little kids talk about their past lives, and it's hard to discredit. It's really hard to discredit some of these stories. It's like, how in the world did this 3-year-old little girl, this 3-year-old little boy, you know, start saying all this stuff that came out to be true about a random pilot back in, the 1600s? It's like, what? Like, how is that? I don't know. It's wild to think about.
and you know, you think about it as like kids are on, their brain waves are on a different frequency and on another level as ours. They're much more creative because, you
Absolutely.
know, like they're so much usually more curious about so many more things. And then once most people become like adults or teenagers, it's just kind of like, all right, like this is life, whatever, right? But as a kid, it's like you're not really indoctrinated fully into how society works, so you're still thinking about like all the other things. And then another thing you could think about is, yes, the kids could be, I guess, making it up because like they're being using like their creative potential and everything, but also like maybe they actually were that in a past life, and then once you're conditioned to a certain degree, your brain just kind of like forgets about all that.
Exactly. You start to be programmed and brainwashed into this like certain society, and I think that's why a lot of like you hear a lot of like crazy stories. I don't know if you've heard about all this, but crazy stories about how like the elites um like I don't know, handle babies and study them and take them, whatever it is. Like there's this baby like obsession, but I think there's this like chemical. that is so powerful in the beginning, because it's very unprogrammed is exactly what it is. And it's this just imagination and openness to the world that us adults just do not have and will never have, because we have just this programming of how our life is and how it's supposed to be. I don't know, it's kind of wild to think about it. I don't know.
Yeah, because when you come into the world, you're completely unprogrammed. Like I think I mean in terms of like psychology, I've heard that like most people are born with like an innate fear of like losing their mother or certain things like that. But
Sure.
generally speaking, like we're basically unprogrammed. And there was a psychologist, I don't remember what his name was, but he was talking about how you give him a child from when they're like really young, he can make them into whatever that he wants to make them into, because you can like you what I'm sure the government does, and I'm sure they take kids and they have an agenda for this person should turn out this way, and then they raise them to how they believe that'll work, and
Mm-hmm.
then it works, and then they like, all right, we want this, but we want to take this kid and he'll be the president in whatever year, and then like that's what happens, because like you can like you
Program.
putting somebody under enough controlled situations and lifestyle, like you will literally make them into whatever you want. And it's like that, I mean, that's why like us as everyday people, we don't have the commodity of raising our child exactly how we want them to be, because we have to go to work, we can't spend every single time, we have to do all these other things. But the people who are up there, they got that's their job. Their
Yeah.
job is to groom this kid into being
Mm-hmm.
whoever. And I think about stuff like that, and it's like, how many of these political candidates, how many of these celebrities, whoever they are up top, are like those types of people, and they're not what we've been told as the kid who grew up in Louisiana and now he's here and trapped. Now I'm not discrediting that. There's probably a bunch of people who are up there that
Right.
did come from like very
Of
difficult
course.
lives and everything, but I definitely think there are people mixed in there that are not as natural
As you
us.
seem, for sure, for sure. I think um I don't even know. I think the reason why, like, childhood, as we grow up, I think something that I struggle with is remembering my past and reflecting on my past too much. And that's why we talk about how, like, childhood trauma is like such a big thing that adults have to overcome, because it's this programming, this subconscious programming that's been literally ingrained into the gray matter of our brains for years, of how things are supposed to work and how um, life is supposed to be. And as kids, things happen to us, and it's either trauma or whatever happens, and it gets stuck. And then we're kind of, this is now an adult's battle to try to start overcoming those things. And a lot of times you don't even remember the things that happened to you as a child that you're now holding on to as an adult, um, that you're now having to try to release. I don't know, it's an interesting concept, the whole concept about children and how innocent their minds and their brains are, and how powerful that is, um, and how important good parenting and being raised is, because it literally forms your entire life. It really, really does.
Yeah, and then the problem is, since this knowledge isn't very widespread, the majority of people aren't ever going to be aware that they have this subconscious programming and they're insecure about this, or they have this trauma that stemmed from their childhood. They'll never even realize that, so they will go throughout the entirety of the rest of their life just living in that fear and whatever that trauma was that's still affecting them, because they're just not aware of it.
Exactly, and they will never come into their power because they'll never be able to realize or understand that. And I think that's also a big part of my TikTok as well. It's like I want people to be able to come into that power and realize how worthy and important you can be. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of self discipline. It takes a lot of learning and understanding and truly, truly believing in the stuff that you're reading and understand. Because like I think in the beginning too, when I was starting all this, I had a hard time convincing myself that my thoughts were creating my reality. It felt very like woo woo to me because I was, kind of indoctrinated in the Bible and religion for a long time. So when I came out of that, it was a lot of convincing myself that this was real. When I literally had the hard documented evidence, like studies and a scientist telling me that this is how it is, it still was hard for me to believe because I was so indoctrinated with this knowledge of this is how life is and I've had this idea since I was a kid. So to break that took a very long time and it took a lot of work. But I think all that work has truly paid off because now it's not even a doubt in my mind. It's exactly how I was like with religion now with my new idea of how reality actually is.
Yeah, it is insane to me how indoctrinated and how programmed we become, so that it does like it's so that yeah, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work to be able to break that because of how ingrained and how set in stone it seems that it is.
Absolutely. And I want to like also preface, I'm in no way dogging religion or all of that at all because to some degree I still believe in parts of it. I just have kind of evolved from that and kind of grew to a different understanding and I'm in no way dogging any kind of religion or um, how people live in their personal life spiritually. This is just how I've come into my belief in what the world is.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that because I think a lot of people like we were talking about earlier, if you say one thing for 2 minutes, then
Yeah,
they just automatically assume other things. So people could have been
exactly.
watching and just assume, oh, well, I guess she just thinks all religious people are horrible people or stuff like that.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. I agree for
but
sure.
yeah, no, because I think like I'm not religious myself, and I take all these different ideas and kind of form my own opinion and belief on how reality is. But I always say that I like to look into different religions and kind of take concepts from them because I think every single religion it has stuff. It's not it has stuff to
There's
learn
stuff,
from. There's a
oh, for
lot of really great stuff.
a lot of really good stuff. And I think um like I still read the Bible because I there are parts of it that I truly truly this is also a whole different like topic and world to get into, but there are parts of it that I still take with me. Um and I think there's parts of every religion that everybody can take a part of. Um and I don't know, I've been kind of on a journey of trying to figure out what that looks like for me and how that works. But I think I've heard stories too about how there's been stories and parts of the Bible that have been taken out and kind of altered. And this is what we were talking about kind of goes back to how society has and the elites have altered certain things to help us be brainwashed and help us be a perfect little society of, oh, this is how things are supposed to be, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, whatever it is. So it's this very regimented way of how we're supposed to live. um and I'm not saying this is how it is, this is just kind of what I've gathered from all of my researching and my crazy holes that I go into. um but yeah, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean it comes down to just I think it's always important to just question everything.
For sure,
Like literally everything. Like
for sure.
even though you love this person to death, like still question what they're saying because whatever they're saying might not be the best thing for you personally. It might work for them, but it might not work for you. I think that stuff is really important. And in terms of the conspiracies and the elites and all that stuff, it's like these are concepts that if you talk to certain people, they label you as a conspiracy theorist and oh no, that's not true, there's no way that's going on. But it's like, how do you think the
Hmm.
world we live in now was created? It's because
Exactly.
they've done so much research and put so much time, energy, money, and everything into this so that it functions this way. And
For
it's
sure.
and then I think once you get to this point of like when you acquire the certain knowledge stuff, it's like it's just undeniable when you get to a point.
100%. 100%. I think that's where critical thinking is so important nowadays. I think, I'm in college right now and I have a lot of thoughts about that and a lot of opinions about um, that. Now I'm kind of in my senior year and I'm just kind of trying to finishing it out. But what college did teach me and what I am very appreciative of was critical thinking. I had a lot of guests that would come in my theology classes specifically and would talk. Sorry, my checkers, come here. And would talk um, about certain topics and understandings, and then I would be like, okay, well that doesn't make sense to me, and I had to use critical thinking skills to be like, all right, just because he's in a lab coat and he's standing on a podium right now doesn't mean that his opinion is correct. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of which is hard to do because you have all your peers around you and literally a collective of people sitting in an auditorium believing this idea. And so I think it's also an energy that you're kind of feeding off of being like, oh, this is correct, this is how it's supposed to be, because energy is a thing as well. But then you also have to come out of it and be like, all right, does this make sense to me? Does this make sense to me? Even though there's a person in a nice little tie that has a degree and has an education, does it make sense to me? Like you said, question all authority. Be curious. I think that my mom taught me that. I think from very young age is the most important thing is to just be a curious person and like research and take action to your curiosity. Um, because knowledge is power in all of it.
Yeah, because if you're not curious about anything new, like you're going to live the rest of your life just in the experience you're in now, and nothing's ever going to
100%.
change, and you're not going to be able to evolve.
I
And
think
I
life is
mean,
boring without
yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, yeah, I was just saying I think life is boring without it.
No, one
Lots of,
hundred percent.
yeah.
And going back a little bit to I know we keep talking about the indoctrination type stuff. My buddy Truman, who I did a podcast with him. He has a TikTok page, talking about self development and spirituality and all this type of stuff. But also he goes into the CIA documents and stuff and kind of the declassified ones and kind of explains it and everything. And it's like he's literally taking the documents that is from the CIA that they have made public, talking about all the messed up stuff that they're doing. All he's doing is explaining it and reading what they put out, and people in the comments are still saying, "No, that's bullshit. This and that." It's like the government is literally telling you, and I was talking about with him. It's like you question yourself. I mean, I think they put like a certain law or something in place that the CIA has to release the certain documents at certain times, stuff like that. But you also think to yourself, why would they even release these documents? And I think a part of the answer is it doesn't really matter if they release it or not, because even if they release it and tell you about the stuff they're doing, nobody's going to look into it anyway.
Yeah. This is the same thing with like for years everybody was like dying for the government to come out with like to say that the UFOs were like actual UFOs, like to talk about UFOs. And then now it's like out that like, oh yeah, there's UFOs and there's like aliens and there's all this stuff, and everybody's just like I haven't heard like any word about people talking about these like documents that are coming out and the documents the CIA is coming out with and all this, and it's so wild to me that I don't know, it's a weird the indoctrination is so powerful, and like you said, they've done such a good job with it because it's even just like tiny little things that make you so brainwashed, like the stuff that you watched as a kid on SpongeBob and all these cartoons and whatever. It goes into the gray matter of your brain and it goes into the subconscious part of your brain. And you don't realize that it's there, but it's there, and it makes you like your phone makes you addicted the way it's created, the colors and everything. The dopamine, the whole everything is created for capitalism, for a business, and that's just how our world is created, which is the way it is. But you just have to be aware of that and be conscious of it, and kind of be, I don't know, you have to go through life with this understanding to be able to survive, honestly, and succeed.
Right. I mean, certain like people will ask me, like what's the point of like talking about this stuff on a podcast or just talking about the government, the stuff the government's doing and all this stuff just with an everyday conversation. What's the point of it? And I'm like, they're like, you're not gonna change it. And I'm like, I know I'm not gonna be able to change any of this stuff. This is just how it is. I'm only one man. But the reason I talk about it is so that more people are aware of just what's going on. Because it's like all I'm interested in is the truth. Like I don't want anything sugar coated. I don't want you to whatever it is. Like just wrap it up in a bunch of stuff, and the truth is actually in there. I just want to know what the truth is. And so all I'm trying to do is when I talk about the stuff is just tell people how it is, and you take it or leave it. But I'm
Right.
just trying to say it how it is.
And I absolutely love that, because I think we just don't get that anymore. And there's so many people who are like famous nowadays on TikTok and stuff, and like you get so much saturated content of the same shit and the same like BS, honestly, every day. And so I commend you and all this community who is just even just conversations. And I think honestly for this podcast and my TikTok and people I talk to and my messages and stuff, it's honestly therapy for me, because it's like it's a very lonely lifestyle once you start kind of being in this world, because it's a very isolating thought, and a very isolating lifestyle. Um but it's so important to talk about, because I think a lot of people just like me and you don't have that community of people to listen to and talk to about it. And I think truth is nowadays the most important thing, because you can't trust or believe anything you see nowadays, you know?
100%. Kaleigh, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome to talk to you and talk to everybody on here. It's awesome.
Where can people check you out?
I have a TikTok, Kaleigh Guerrero. You can find me on there. And that's about it right now. I'm working on making a podcast soon on YouTube, but stay tuned with everything I'm doing on TikTok.
All right, awesome. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye, guys.